You are surrounded by fools, and it is exhausting. You think your intelligence is your greatest asset. It is actually your biggest vulnerability. The modern world tells you to educate the ignorant, to use logic, to find common ground. Arthur Schopenhauer knew the brutal truth. Logic is defenseless against stupidity. Explaining your mind to a fool is not noble. It is intellectual suicide. There is a hidden, almost ruthless architecture to neutralizing the willfully ignorant. A method the most dangerous minds in history used to disarm fools without ever giving them the gift of the truth. Once you understand this mechanic, you will never be drained by a lesser mind again. You know the ache. You are sitting in a room, perhaps a boardroom, a family dinner, or a digital battleground, listening to someone speak with absolute, unshakable confidence about something they completely misunderstand. You feel the pressure building in your chest. Your brain instantly maps out the flaws in their logic. You gather your facts. You prepare your argument. You lay it out perfectly, expecting the light of reason to wash over their face. Instead, they stare at you. They blink. And then, they double down on their original, absurd point. You leave the interaction exhausted, your energy depleted, questioning your own sanity. Why does this happen? Why do you lose when you are objectively right? Because you are suffering from the intelligence trap. You are projecting your own operating system onto a machine that cannot run it. Intelligent people operate under a fatal delusion, the belief that the rest of the world values the truth. You assume that if you just present the right evidence, the other person will analyze it, adjust their worldview, and agree. Schopenhauer despised this naive optimism. In his blistering text, The Art of Being Right, he observed a dark, unyielding law of human nature. People do not argue to find the truth. They argue to establish dominance. Psychology calls it the Dunning-Kruger effect, the cognitive bias where people with low ability possess a hallucinatory level of confidence. But understanding the graph is not enough. You must understand the gravity of it. Ignorance is not a passive state. It is an active, heavily armored defense mechanism. When you introduce logic to a fool, they do not see an opportunity to learn. They see a threat to their ego. And the human ego will burn down the entire world before it admits it is wrong. Daniel Kahneman, in Thinking, Fast and Slow, divided the mind into System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, emotional, and instinctual. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and logical. Stupid people are prisoners of System 1. They live there. They feel an emotion, attach a fast opinion to it, and call it a fact. You, the intelligent person, are trying to use System 2 on them. You are offering nuance. You are offering data. It is a translation error. You are speaking mathematics to a barking dog. Worse, you are doing all the work. You are spending immense caloric energy crafting a perfectly reasoned argument, while they are spending zero energy simply refusing to accept it. They drain you, not by outsmarting you, but by outlasting you. They drag you down into the mud of their own cognitive limitations. Schopenhauer recognized this 2 centuries ago. He realized that truth has absolutely no currency in a debate with a fool. So, what do you do? If logic fails and reasoning is a trap, how do you win? You don't fight them. You weaponize their own momentum. Schopenhauer understood that the intellect is a servant to the will. The will, the blind, irrational, emotional drive of a human being, always wins. When you argue with a fool, you are providing them with exactly what they want. Friction. Friction makes them feel important. Your frustration proves to them that they matter. Every time you counter their point, you legitimize their delusion. You are telling them, your idea is worthy of my time and my anger. To break a fool, you must deny them friction. How? By using Schopenhauer's most savage strategy. Do not disagree with them. Agree with them, but agree with them so completely, so violently, that you push their argument into the realm of pure absurdity. In philosophy, this is akin to reductio ad absurdum. In dark psychology, it is simply handing a man enough rope to hang himself. Imagine a colleague who insists that all modern art is a scam and that anyone could paint a masterpiece. The instinct of the intelligent person is to argue about technique, art history, and subjective expression. Stop. Instead, lean in. Nod slowly. You are entirely right, you say. In fact, since it is so easy, we should quit our jobs today. We will buy some paint this afternoon. You can do the canvases. I will find the gallery. We will be millionaires by Friday. Why are we even sitting in this office? Watch their eyes. You have not attacked them. You have completely validated their premise, but you have accelerated it to its logical, catastrophic conclusion. The fool operates on the surface. They never think 3 steps ahead. When you force them to look at the destination of their own thought process, their brain short-circuits. They have to backpedal, they have to inject nuance, they have to suddenly start arguing against themselves to save face. You did not defeat them with your logic. You defeated them with their own stupidity. Schopenhauer employed this mercilessly against his academic rivals. He did not engage in polite discourse with people he considered charlatans. He did not treat their ideas as equals. He magnified their flaws until the flaws became comical. When you do this, you protect your own energy. You step out of the ring. You become the observer, watching a child trip over their own shoelaces. But this requires a terrifying shift in your own psychology. You must kill the part of your ego that desperately wants to be recognized as right. Intelligent people are addicted to being correct. You want the satisfaction of the other person conceding. You want the moral victory. Schopenhauer would tell you that seeking validation from a fool is the ultimate form of stupidity. Why do you care if a lesser mind acknowledges your brilliance? Why do you need a blind man to compliment your painting? When you drop the need to be right in their eyes, you become immune to their provocations. You stop giving them the remote control to your nervous system. Let them hold their incorrect beliefs. Let them walk into the world with their flawed maps. It is not your duty to save them. It is your duty to protect yourself from them. Which brings us to a darker, more necessary realization. Stupidity is not a passive trait. It is highly contagious. If you spend enough time trying to navigate the chaotic, irrational landscape of a foolish person's mind, you will begin to compromise your own. Cognitive load theory explains that our mental bandwidth is strictly limited. When you interact with a highly irrational person, your brain works overtime. You are trying to predict their unpredictable reactions. You are suppressing your own frustration. You are walking on eggshells. This sustained cognitive taxation slowly degrades your own decision-making abilities. You become irritable. You make poor choices. You lose your creative edge. You are letting a parasite feed on your intellectual capital. Schopenhauer was notoriously solitary. People called him a misanthrope. They said he hated humanity, but read the wisdom of life. He did not hate humanity. He was simply ruthless about his mental diet. He wrote, "To marry is to halve your rights and double your duties." He applied the same harsh mathematics to human interaction. To engage with a fool is to halve your intelligence and double your exhaustion. He developed the famous porcupine dilemma. On a cold winter night, porcupines huddle together for warmth, but their quills prick each other, forcing them apart. They are trapped between freezing in isolation or bleeding in intimacy. The intelligent person must master this distance. You cannot avoid stupid people entirely. They are your managers, your clients, your neighbors, and sometimes your blood. But you must establish a psychological quarantine. When you are forced to interact with them, you do not bring your authentic self to the table. You bring an avatar. The avatar is polite. The avatar smiles. The avatar speaks in short, agreeable sentences. Interesting perspective. I see what you mean. That's one way to look at it. The avatar gives them nothing to attack. The avatar is a mirror, reflecting their own noise back at them, while your actual mind remains protected behind a fortress of detachment. This is the Machiavellian application of Schopenhauer's philosophy. You are physically present, but intellectually absent. They will think they are having a conversation with you. They will think they are winning. Let them. The illusion of victory is the cheapest toy you can give a fool to keep them quiet. Do you feel the guilt rising? The societal conditioning telling you that this is manipulative, that it is arrogant to view others this way? Kill that guilt. That guilt is exactly why you have been suffering. You have been treating intellectual predators like fragile victims. A foolish person who aggressively insists on their own ignorance is not innocent. They are a hazard. David Robson, in The Intelligence Trap, details how institutional stupidity, smart people following the confident, incorrect herd, has caused plane crashes, economic collapses, and medical disasters. Stupidity is dangerous. You do not owe it your vulnerability. You do not owe it your energy. You must view their ignorance as a force of nature. You do not argue with a hurricane. You do not try to educate a flood. You board up the windows. You seek high ground, and you let the storm exhaust itself. But what happens when the fool has power over you? What happens when the irrational mind signs your paycheck or holds the key to your promotion? How do you survive when the system itself rewards the loudest idiot in the room? This requires an entirely different set of weapons. The most dangerous animal is not the predator, it is the frightened beast with a crown. When a person of low intellect acquires power, their entire psychological architecture is built on a fault line of deep, unacknowledged insecurity. They sense, on a primal level, that they are outmatched by the minds around them. They do not process this as a need to learn. They process it as a threat to their survival. If you walk into their domain and display your brilliance, you are not proving your worth. You are holding a mirror up to their inadequacy. And a fool with power will shatter the mirror to avoid looking at the reflection. Schopenhauer was brutally clear about this dynamic. He wrote that to display conspicuous intelligence or outstanding qualities in the presence of mediocrity is an unpardonable sin. The mediocre mind experiences physical pain in the presence of greatness. It triggers a secret, gnawing hatred. They will not attack your intelligence directly. They will attack your character. They will call you difficult, uncooperative, or not a team player. They will use the bureaucracy of the system to bleed you dry. You cannot out-argue a king in his own castle. You must outplay him. Look at the blood-soaked history of the Three Kingdoms. Sima Yi was arguably the most brilliant military strategist of his era, but he found himself serving beneath Cao Shuang, a regent of immense power and staggering foolishness. Cao Shuang was arrogant, impulsive, and deeply envious of Sima Yi's intellect. If Sima Yi challenged him, he and his entire bloodline would be executed. If he argued, he would be crushed. So, Sima Yi executed the most humiliating and effective strategy in the history of warfare, the submission gambit. He faked senility. When Cao Shuang's spies came to check on him, Sima Yi acted the part of a dying, pathetic old man. He purposely dropped his soup, letting it spill down his robes. He pretended he could not hear. He confused names. He looked entirely broken. The spy reported back to Cao Shuang. The foolish regent laughed. He felt superior. He felt safe. He stopped viewing Sima Yi as a threat and lowered his defenses. The fool's ego was satisfied. Months later, while Cao Shuang was out on a hunting trip, Sima Yi dropped the act. He rose from his sickbed, orchestrated a lightning-fast military coup, and seized the entire empire. Cao Shuang lost his head because he believed the illusion. Sima Yi understood something you must learn today. Your intelligence is not a badge you wear on your chest. It is a concealed weapon. You do not draw a concealed weapon to show off. You keep it hidden until the exact moment it is required. When dealing with a powerful fool, feed them the exact emotion they are starving for: superiority. Ask them for advice on trivial matters. Let them correct you on minor, irrelevant details. Thank them for their insight. You are not submitting. You are anesthetizing them. You are injecting their ego with a narcotic so heavy they fall asleep at the wheel. leaving you free to operate in the shadows. You trade a momentary scratch to your pride for absolute, unhindered maneuverability. There is a specific type of exhaustion that comes from trying to translate complex reality for a simplistic mind. You draw diagrams, you use analogies, you break the concept down into its smallest atomic parts, and they still stare at you, their eyes completely blank, before repeating the exact same flawed argument they made 20 minutes ago. This is the core of the intelligence trap. You assume their inability to understand is a failure of your explanation. It is not. It is a failure of their hardware. David Robson's research on cognitive bias reveals a chilling reality. Highly intelligent people are uniquely vulnerable to a specific error, the belief that everyone else processes information the same way they do. You think in probabilities, you weigh evidence, you adjust your conclusions based on new data. The fool thinks in absolutes. They form a conclusion first, usually based on a visceral emotion or tribal loyalty, and then they completely reject any data that contradicts it. Trying to force them to see the nuance is like trying to install the latest operating system on a typewriter. It is impossible. The architecture does not support it. So, stop trying. Schopenhauer advised a radical departure from the instinct to educate. In his 38 stratagems for winning an argument, he designed tactics specifically for dealing with opponents who are immune to reason. One of his most effective methods is the strategic use of irony. When a fool corners you with a demand for agreement on a ridiculous premise, do not fight the premise. Say this: "What you are proposing is so extraordinary, it completely transcends my poor capacity to understand it. I must defer to your judgment." The fool will puff out their chest. They will take it as a concession. They will believe they have dazzled you with their brilliance. But anyone with a fraction of intellect watching the exchange